Hello everyone. My name is Angelica Trento and I'm a student just like you. I have a bachelor's degree in languages, quindi ho una laurea triennale. I studied English and Spanish. And I'm currently in my last semester as a master's degree student, quindi attualmente sono una studentessa di laurea magistrale in language sciences in Ca' Foscari University of Venice. I'm doing my internship at your school, quindi il mio tirocinio, and with today's lesson I was asked to make you a little more familiar with the Wall Street crash of 1929 in English. But I promise that I'll try to make this lesson as simple and easy as possible, providing you with the meanings and translations and definitions of words, difficult words, and also difficult parts of this lesson. And I have two things to tell you before we get started. Number one, if you can't understand something or something is not clear to you, you can comment down below the video and I'll reply as soon as possible. And second thing, I'll leave the link to the script of this lesson, quindi la trascrizione, no, della lezione, in the video description, so you can download it, and also the link to the Prezi presentation that I'll use for this lesson, so you can check them out yourselves. And now let's get started, and let's begin today's lesson with a picture, actually. Okay, this is a picture that was taken by Ben Shahn, who was a photographer whose mission was to capture the American reality after the Wall Street crash of 1929 and the subsequent worldwide economic depression known as the Great Depression, which actually began in the USA. Now, as you can see, let's zoom in. As you can see, there's an American family that seems very poor. For example, there's a hole in the little boy's trousers here. I know that today people are actually buying jeans with holes, but because it's trendy, it's another story. And they are traveling by car because the family man actually has lost his job, and so they had to leave their home and travel around America to look for a job to be able to get by, to survive, andare avanti. Therefore, there's a big contradiction in this picture. On the one hand, we immediately think of a condition of poverty, of a condition of unemployment. On the other hand, we can see that in the 1930s, progress and poverty coexisted, so they existed together, were present simultaneously. We think about progress and modernity when we see the car the family is in. So we see that poor people actually traveled around by car. In today's lesson, we are going to learn about the period that followed the end of the First World War, the decade of the 1920s, which was a prosperous decade for both America and Europe until the Wall Street crash of 1929, which caused the worst economic crisis in the history of the Western world. Okay, let's move on. to the next slide. Now, by the end of the 1920s, the world seemed to have overcome much of the trauma of the First World War. Okay. How? Here's a question. Well, first, it was a rather peaceful decade, with no wars between the great powers. Okay. And then Germany was reintegrated into the international system thanks to the Dawes Plan of 1924, which improved relations with the Allies, reduced the burden of reparations. Remember that by the Peace Treaty of Versailles, the treaty that brought the First World War to an end, signed on the 28th June 1919, Germany had to accept complete responsibility for the war. And the Allies also demanded large amounts of money known as reparations. And the Dawes Plan approved loans from the USA to stimulate the economic growth of Germany. Okay, and then another treaty that reintegrated Germany into the international system was the Locarno Treaties of 1925, which helped improve relations with Britain and France in particular. Okay. Third reason why the world seemed to have overcome the trauma of the First World War is that after a period of recession immediately following the First World War that lasted 5 years, the economy of the Western industrialized world began to recover, quindi a riprendersi, no? L'economia. And this was also thanks to the incredible economic expansion of the United States. Let's move on to the Roaring Twenties. As I mentioned earlier, the period that followed the end of the First World War, the decade of the 1920s, was a prosperous decade for both America and Europe, but especially for America. So prosperous, indeed, that many called it the Roaring Twenties. Okay, so roaring, from the verb to roar, in italiano ruggire, I ruggenti anni venti, referring to an engine roar, okay, because cars were becoming cheaper and more popular in this period, as we saw in the first picture, in the picture that we saw in the first slide. A lot of people started buying and using cars, okay, because they were becoming cheaper at the time, quindi meno costose. During the war, so the Roaring Twenties, during the war, the USA was the largest producer of durable consumer goods, food, raw materials, quindi materie grezze, no? Materie prime, and munitions during the war. We are talking about the war, First World War. And second thing, it provided the warring European allies with loans, becoming the world's biggest capital exporter. Okay. Once the war ended, so after the war, the dollar became the most powerful currency of the world economy. The New York stock market was getting stronger and stronger. And one of you might ask, what the hell is a stock market? Okay, a stock market is a place where buyers and sellers meet to sell shares and stocks. What are shares and stocks? Shares and stocks are tiny parts of a company. So, in italiano, no, stock market è la borsa, quindi quel luogo in cui si svolge la compravendita di titoli, azioni, eccetera, che quindi attestano il possesso parziale di una società. How do stock markets actually work? To grow and earn cash to be able to run their businesses, per poter andare avanti, no? Espandersi, corporations sell stocks to investors. And if the economy is booming, like the American economy was at the time in the 1920s, people can make a lot of money by investing in the stock market. But then we'll see this. We'll see this later also. Number 3, productivity increased thanks to mass production. What is mass production? Mass production is the production of large quantities of similar products, often using assembly lines, so catena di montaggio, or automation technology, using repetitive and standardized processes to keep costs low. The use of automation technology in industry is actually caused the loss of jobs because many workers could be actually replaced by machines, but so that also these were the consequences. Okay, now there's a video that I found that can give you a better idea of what I'm talking about. It's a very short original 1920s recording of an automobile factory. There's no audio. It's just to give you an idea. It's very brief. It lasts like a minute and a half or something like that. Okay, so we can go on and look at it. This is an automobile factory. They were producing cars in the 1920s. And but if you look at the presentation, the audio actually appears. It's just because I'm recording and it does not record of the video. But and these were factories in the 1920s. Okay, number 4, the introduction and diffusion of the automobile and household appliances gave rise to the consumer society. So we have ads of a refrigerator, vacuum cleaner and